Hey everyone, welcome back to the Letter to Life podcast. Today, our hosts, Gio and Jordan, are going to talk to you about code switching in the workplace and having a secure sense of self. Hope you enjoy it, and let's get into it.
Welcome back to another episode of Letter to Life podcast. Back here is your co-host, Jordan, Gio. Oh, my bad, Gio.
You good?
Gio's in the spot too. I'm feeling very New York today, Gio. So if I throw in some New York slang, don't mind it.
Yeah,
He knows I'm really from Brooklyn. I'm really from the islands.
You're not.
Hey, but what type of like everyone has their first job, and I can only imagine how that is in New York. Like, what, you work at the corner store? You work at MTA? Like, what'd you do?
I've actually never had a job in New York.
What?
Never did.
I don't blame you, though.
Because I left New York when I was 14. So,
Oh, that's like the age you can start working.
No.
I was not?
No.
Wait.
The legal age 17?
No, there's like child labor laws for that stuff.
Exactly. So, I never.
It's 14.
Not in New York.
Really?
Have you ever seen a 14-year-old working in New York?
At the McDonald's. Oh, in Georgia?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
I was about to say, yeah. In Georgia, it's 14.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
That is wicked.
It is little kids out here with motion, bro.
Yikes. Well, it won't be my child with motion at 14. But yeah, I've never had a job in New York. My first job was actually here when I was 18.
Where were you working at?
General counsel, work study, Columbus State.
Oh, that was your first job? That's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, so you just living life, just living good, just
Living life.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm. I never, and I don't want this to sound like I'm bragging, but I never had to worry about, where my next meal was going to be or anything like that. My family always had me and my sisters covered. So
that's what's up. That's what's up.
What was your first job?
What was my first job? I believe it was at a trampoline park, like a Sky Zone.
How old were you?
I was like 15, 16. Yeah.
What were you doing?
They would make me like watch the little kids jump around and stuff.
Okay.
And make sure they couldn't sue us because people weren't watching or weren't supervising. I hated that job though. I hated it.
How'd you get the job?
It was like through a friend. Oh, I'm sorry. No, my first job was at Margaritaville. That's how I got that job. I was working at a Margaritaville as a cook. And then my manager left and went to it was called Rock and Jump.
Right. At 15?
Yeah. Bro, I was getting money.
What were you cooking at 15?
It didn't matter, bro. I was getting money.
Okay.
But so like our first job's drastically different. I'm sure you're in like a corporate office doing corporate work, and I'm in a kitchen, slumming it, So like coming from your background, coming from like New York, how did that translate to walking into that office and like trying to adhere to that culture? Like specifically when it comes to like code switching, how did you navigate that environment?
Well, it was a culture shock for sure. Because of course I've never had a job before in my life.
Right.
I never knew how to. I mean, I kind of knew like the basics, like, okay, well, this is how you should dress, things of that nature. But to actually be in an actual corporate environment and actually working, I've never experienced that. But it was just weird. Like, even though in the office I was working for two people, I was working for my boss and somebody that works with my boss. And they were very proper or posh. I'd say that.
Right.
And it was weird because I would have to structure, the things that I'm saying. Because of course, like, I knew from Collegiate 100, like, how to carry myself professionally to a certain extent, but to actually be in a corporate environment with people who actually do this for a living and somebody who's fresh being thrown into the wolves, it was very hard. Because even though, they were, the same as me,
Right.
I can still see that they take it very seriously and they kind of have to operate in a different capacity than they would like one of their regular friends on the street. And, of course, I remember we had me and my boss, we had a first conversation, and there was something that I did my second day when I was there.
Bro, on your second
It
day?
was my second day. I took a nap. So like I had my own.
What?
Yes, I had my own office, and my door was closed. I didn't know that he had a key to my office as well. So
Bro, so you thought it was cool to just sleep at work? Like,
I had
let me
nothing
get
to do.
like a quick nap.
I
in.
did no, I did all my work. I had nothing to do.
So you thought the next step was a nap?
Because he went. It was. I remember it was like in between 12 and 1. That's when they go on their lunch break. So, I mean, I already had breakfast. I wasn't hungry. So I just took a nap, and then he woke me up. I was like, oh. And then of course, we just had a conversation about it. And he was basically saying, when you go out into like the actual real world and like actually with people who actually do this for a living, you can't sleep on a job. Like you'll get fired instantly. And I'm so lucky I did not get fired.
Bro, Craig should have probably. Oh. You can bleep that out.
Yeah.
Yo, Craig should have fired you on the spot.
I just say it again.
Oh my God. But yeah, that's how it was for me. Yeah, just being able to learn how to adjust my rhetoric, adjust my jargon, adjust the way how I'm presenting myself in front of actual professionals who are doing this for a living. It was hard, but eventually, where I am at now, I can handle it.
Right.
What about you?
I'd say for me, it was like a gradual shift into that type of like censoring.
Right.
I wouldn't even call it like like code switching, and I understand like
Right.
some of my family, they come from a different part of the country where they talk a whole lot different. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I can be adaptable when it comes to that, but like it was more of like a gradual thing when it came to adopting a more professional way of saying things. I don't know if that's what we should call it, but it was like I had this job, and then I had this job, and I was slowly moving up to like more of the corporate side of things, and then once I got there, it was like, okay, now I'm in it,
Right.
So it was more like a gradual thing where I could like pick things up as I go instead of just being thrown into it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think that definitely afforded me a luxury compared to like somebody like you. If we worked in the same office, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Bro, sleeping on the second day, I'm gonna leave that alone. But it was a gradual thing for me.
So with it being a gradual thing for you, how did you, I guess, with it being a gradual thing, was it like something where every day something different was happening where you kind of like, okay, well, now I know not to do this, or I have to do this for the next time I do this?
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely times where I like said things and they were like, they'll give you this look, you know what I'm saying? And it's not even like something where it's like a look of disapproval. It's like a look of like, they don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And I like, I'm saying they is like not like an opposition, but like they, as in like I grew up differently than they did. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, once I got into that environment, they look and be like, well, they don't know what that means. You know what I'm saying? But it wasn't like something where they would like stop the whole conversation and be like, what does that mean? It was just like kind of sweep it under the rug or whatnot. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that I would say that that's what it was like for me.
So like with growing up, like of course we're both African Americans, and there's a particular
Jamaican American.
Here we go. There's a particular not stigma, but there's a particular viewpoint on how we conduct ourselves in a regular setting, like at a barbecue or a cookout or something.
Right.
People would describe it as quote unquote ghetto or quote unquote ratchet or whatever the case may be. So with that being said, do you think that plays a role in somebody's ability to code switch? Because there's some African American people who can. I'll put it like this. There's some African American people who came from the bottom of the barrel, got it out the mud, things like that. Like they've really been through the actual struggle.
Right.
So for them to
Like
actually,
somebody from like New Orleans or something.
yeah, and like to actually get a corporate.
Hey, there's
job
no
and
hate
go
to people from New Orleans.
Yeah,
I just-
we love people from NOLA, but to get an actual corporate job, it'll be harder for them versus somebody who, you know, African American who grew up in the nicer side of town and like the suburbs and things of that nature. Do you think it's hard for somebody who hasn't had those tools or hasn't been exposed to that type of lifestyle to go ahead and automatically know how to code switch?
Yeah, I mean, you're not gonna like if we threw, for example, and this is outlandish, but if we threw like NBA YoungBoy into like the Congress, you know what I'm saying? You know, like of course that's not gonna work. You know what I'm saying? So I think there's two things in which are going to afford you some success in those type of environments.
Yeah.
I think the first is like being open-minded. So like understanding that where you grew up and you know what you heard, what you listened to, what you say it's not the only place. You know what I'm saying? You're not the only focal point.
Yeah.
And there's going to be millions of people that you're going to come across that are from totally different backgrounds. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
first you have to be open-minded in that part, because if you feel like you're just a center of the world, it won't matter. You just like you're going to be asking everyone why they're speaking like that. You know what I'm saying? And I think the second is like being okay with being adaptable. You know what I'm saying? You have to have some sort of adaptability, because if you're not willing to adapt to a different environment, especially as black men or even as a minority, you know, you could be giving yourself a disservice. But I think there's an opposite side of this conversation that we probably do need to talk about.
We do.
And I think sometimes we shouldn't have to change how we are, the way we speak, you know what I'm saying, how we quote unquote carry ourselves for a space that is not exactly dominated by us.
I agree. You put that so perfectly. I agree. I think when it comes to that, of course, yeah, there is a conversation that needs to be held regarding that. And I'm so glad that we have this platform where we can actually touch on it on a surface level, not really go down to the nitty gritty, because that's a whole nother probably like 8 seasons worth of episodes like that. But I don't know. I think with, you know, people who grew up in, you know, the harder and the more not what word I'm looking for, like the harder and less developed sides of town, people who don't come from the suburb, people who, you know, projects per se. And I don't want to, and I just want to say this, I don't want the projects to be synonymous with African Americans. I'll just say that.
Right.
The projects are synonymous with people who don't have the tools or the resources to, number one, get themselves out, and actually, you know, make a name for themselves. And number two, people who are at a financial disparity in the economy by default. So that's what, when I say projects, that's what that's synonymous with, in my opinion. But people who come from, you know, the projects and, you know, they aren't in the suburbs, they never have the luxury of experiencing poshness in a way. I don't know the exact word for it, but like experiencing like poshness or experiencing like something where they're able to put on their best face, if that makes sense. And I think, of course, it'll be.
What does that even? Wait, hold on. What does that even mean, though?
Oh yeah.
What do you put on their best face? Like they have to put on their best face for that environment, like.
And it's sad. Like that's honestly the reality of it. It's sad that we have to. Have you ever heard the saying where they say, if you know an African American goes into a room and they do an interview and their resume is twice as long than a counterpart that's, you know, completely on the opposite side. The resume is twice as long. They're dressed the part, everything like that. They're less likely to get the job just because of their skin color. I just want you to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
When I say best face, like by default, we have to do everything on another scale to get the same reward or to get the same or to just to level the playing field. We have to do it. We have to do it twice as much to level the playing field. I don't know if that makes sense. So with that being said, if somebody has to put on their best face to go to an interview, they have to, if somebody has locks, if somebody has a fro, they have to, okay, well, you got to comb your hair, you got to brush your hair, you got to put it back. You can't have it all, you got to basically like put on your best face and come in quote unquote professional.
Yeah.
Because that's two different sides of professionalism.
Yeah.
I think for those type of people, it's engraved in their minds and by their families to be able to get those jobs. That's what you have to do, and people are conditioned that way. Rather than an African American person who grew up in the suburbs, they can just go into store. They won't get racially profiled. They won't get anything.
Yeah.
They can go to a job, and their resume is top tier. Their outfit is top tier. It's just the way how they're speaking. Can you properly conduct yourself? Can you probably enunciate your words and things of that nature?
I don't know. For me, it's a internal conflict when it comes to these type of things. I definitely understand that the system itself it wasn't built for us. We may have built the system, but it wasn't built for us. You know what I'm saying? Right. So, like I said, going back to that adaptability piece, we have to be able to conform in some way.
Right.
But at the same time, I feel like when it comes to code switching, I think it should be by choice. You know what I'm saying? And when I say that, I mean, if you feel as though you need to code switch, don't compromise yourself or your character. You know what I'm saying? If those things come natural to you and that is something that you are comfortable with, then do you. You know what I'm saying? But if you feel like that is something that is taking away from you, that is compromising yourself as an individual, then I think that's where it should be a line drawn. You know what I'm saying? Because we fill up the same amount of space as they do.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So we have to have some self-respect for ourselves. Yeah. Which is not easy to do. I mean, with that doesn't mean that you come in there and you just start talking crazy and then don't have the work experience or the background or the things needed to back that up. You know what I'm saying? If you're going to own yourself, like, you better be someone of significance. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Which I think when some people hear that when it comes to code switching the environment, they just run with, I'm going to just be myself. You know what I'm saying? And then they go in there and they're not good at their job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what's crazy? Like, of course, if I had an interview at Google, right? If I had a job at Google, I can't go into that office and speak to my supervisor the way I would speak to you.
Right.
And it's not something where it's like code switching per se, but I think there's like a very fine line between code switching and just adapting to the environment that you're placed in. So, like, of course, code switching is like, okay, well, like, behind closed doors, I'm doing all this cursing, a whole different way, a whole bunch of slang, so on and so forth. But when I get in front of my bosses, my supervisors, my professors, instructors, things of that nature, like, I'm a completely different person. Like, I don't like at home, I can like watching Blue's Clues, but at work, I like watching Law and Order.
Right.
Like, it's different things like that. And I think that's the fine line between code switching. Code switching can be what I just explained, or it can be adapting to the different environments that you're placed in.
Right.
Now, that's different.
Right. So I think I'm not going to say cut and dry, but there's a lot more concreteness when it's in the work environment. Now, what happens if you pull that out into like a social aspect? So let's say just from the Black experience, I come from, the metro area of Atlanta, definitely the suburbs. I'm sure you can hear that in my voice. And I mean, that's just a reflection of where I grew up. You know what I'm saying? However, where my family resides is from a completely different area. I mean, they stay like I'm not gonna say like they're just like down bad. Like my
Right.
family's not down bad at all. But I'm saying like just the environment that they grow up in is completely different. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They grow up in some of the worst cities in Mississippi. You know what I'm saying? So that's completely different environment. So just kind of bringing that conversation back to a social aspect, how do you think you were supposed to handle black people feeling some type of way about other black people coming from different places, different spaces, and then coming in there and just they're trying to adapt as well. You know what I'm saying? They're trying to assimilate in some way, but I think we have a tendency to call that kind of stuff out as like BS.
Right. You know that. Well, I'm so glad you just brought that up because for all my All American fans out there was the episode where Spencer and what's his name? Spencer and Jordan they were in the car. Spencer came from South Crenshaw. You know that's South Crenshaw, and then Jordan came from.
Hey, Spencer can't run no routes in that show, by the way. That's horrible. That show is horrible at that.
Everything is so horrible when it comes to the football. But Jordan is from Beverly Hills. You know his mom is white, his dad is black. He has a twin sister. So on and so forth. And there was an episode where they had got pulled over, and they were first of all they were in a convertible. And the first thing Spencer did once he saw the lights, he put his hands on the dashboard.
Right.
Jordan had his hands on the wheel.
Right.
When the officer came over, Jordan was like, "Oh, why'd I get pulled over?" So on and so forth. And the man was saying, "Oh, license, registration." And Jordan was listening, and Spencer was trying to tell him like, go ahead and do it. And Jordan didn't want to do it. And you saying that, it just brought that to me because when you have the people on one side who have grown up in, the I don't want to say the projects, people that have grown in less developed, with lesser opportunities to make a social or an economic impact.
Disenfranchised,
Yes.
marginalized.
Exactly.
Whole bunch of synonyms for that.
You have those on that side, and you have people who come from the suburbs. The people on the side of the marginalized, I feel like they feel some type of way when other black people are, the ones that come from Beverly Hills and the suburbs and so on and so forth. I feel like they feel a way about that because their mind is not open enough to know that there are other black people. Not all black people come from
right.
the bottom.
That's a stereotype. But you're just reinforcing another stereotype, which I understand. Like if that's how if that's where you're from and that's all you see, I understand that. But like you have to have some perspective because if that's the case, then yeah, we're just reinforcing our own stereotype.
Right.
That's
true. And I think with that as well, like you can't. Of course, people only know. I'm so glad I just thought about this too. So there's a example that my friend Stevan he had made during one of his last speaking engagements. He basically made the analogy of a cup of a fly inside of a water bottle. So with the cap on the water bottle, right? If the fly jumps 2 feet in the air, it's going to hit the top of the cap.
Mm-hmm.
The fly is going to be trained to think that is the highest that it can go, right? Then if you magically turn take the cap off, the fly isn't thinking, well, the door is unlocked for me to go and, get this for myself to do all these different things that I never had the opportunity to do before. The fly is going to try to jump 4 feet in the air and realize it's a whole nother world outside of the environment that he was in. And I'm so glad I just remember that because that really coincides with this. It reinforces the stereotype when black people judge or down another black person that came from the suburbs, that came from a better opportunity than that they never had in their life. And I think what people have to understand, they have to get out of the mindset that all black people come from the bottom.
Right.
There are some black people, of course, that come from the bottom, and that's not their fault at all. But it's just the state of the world, how everything was built, how the system has treated us, and how the system was created around us.
Right.
That's how people are thinking. But then on the other side, you have people who, of course, they would have, their white mom or white dad or whatever the case may be. But you can't fault them for that because they didn't ask to be placed there. That's what they were, that's where they were born. So they're going to, of course, do what they can with the environment that they're placed in. So if that means, well, I get to drive to school in a 2023 Maserati, and you drive to school on the cheese bus, called cheese bus.
Jeez, bro. That must be some New York slang. I'm still in that.
You have to drive. You have to go to school on a cheese bus. Then at the same time, you can't fault me for that because that's your experience. That's not my experience, and my
Right.
experience is not your experience. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think um, if we had a bit more perspective about things, it it can turn out to be a little different. You know what I'm saying? But like, I feel like when someone comes into an environment from the suburbs and they come into a different environment that, um, I mean, they're obviously talking different, they're acting different. You know what I'm saying? And they're able
Right.
to do that. They're able to do that. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not gonna call people out, but I know I've met a bunch of them at school. You know what I'm saying? Like I know where you come from. You know what I'm saying? We come from the same place, but you acting totally different right now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's not like they might not be compromising themselves. They just might feel more comfortable in that. But some group of people eventually are gonna be like, you know, you're fake. Like you're not from here. We're not going for that. You know what I'm saying? That's like if Drake is gonna be like, yeah, like I'm like 21 Savage when it's not, you know, that's not the
Yeah.
case. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So like, how do we deal with that type of situation?
And you know what's crazy? I don't have an answer for that because I think, well, this is the answer now, but to that question, I don't have an answer for because I think when someone who is obviously pretending and putting on a front in front of people that know the truth and know where you came from, they came from those same places too. Um, if you have those people who are on one side of the spectrum, who are basically, for lack of a better words, using where they came from as a not a crutch, but like a sob story per se.
Mhm.
I'll say that, a sob story. Using where they're from as a sob story. You have them on one side of the spectrum, and you have the people on the other side of the spectrum who are like true to their city, they're true to their town. Like no matter how many times they're moved or where they're moved to in the world or the country, they're always going to be that place till the day they die. Like somebody, for me, for example, Brooklyn will always be my home. Like every single time I go to New York, just New York as a whole, I'll always feel like at home because, of course, that's where I grew up, you know, things of that nature. But for example, when I moved to Georgia, I'm not gonna try to put on the front like, oh well, you know, I came from Brooklyn, you know, I came from the bottom of the barrel, you know, and this is very terrible. Now I'm in Georgia, I'm living in the suburbs, you know. Um, I don't care about my past, you know, my past is my past, so on and so forth. Me personally, I can't do that because I feel like I'll be doing myself a disservice and I wouldn't be truthful with myself, knowing that I enjoyed being in Brooklyn. I enjoyed, you know, going to the corner store, being on Junction, going to Kings Plaza, a whole bunch of different things. I enjoyed that. But at the end of the day, um, the people who try to put on a front and try to fake about it, at the end of the day, they're just not being truthful with themselves, and people can see right through that. So,
Right.
yeah.
No, I agree. Um, so just so you guys know, and I know this might be a little confusing, and code switching can be one of those confusing topics. We wanted to give you guys like a more, I guess, like concrete definition, so you can like also analyze this with us. So, code switching is when a member of an underrepresented group consciously or unconsciously adjusts their language, syntax, grammatical structure, behavior, etc., to fit into the dominant culture. But I think it's really interesting in the social environment, even though work is also a social structure. Seeing it outside of work makes it a bit more murky. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I did want to shift back to work because
Okay.
I think there's a really interesting thing here when it comes to code switching. So you spend all your day doing grueling work, whatever that is. You probably work in STEM, honestly. No hate to my STEM majors.
Thank you.
Wait, is finance? Finance is technically a STEM major, right?
No, it's not.
It's like analytical data.
Science, technology, English.
Math
and
is a science, ain't it?
That's true.
Well, that's all finance is.
Wait.
The M in STEM is mathematics.
Oh yeah. I'm a STEM major. Oh yeah, hold on. I love STEM majors. My bad.
Oh, my
my
God.
bad. Wait, hold on.
Oh my god.
But yeah, let's say you're working in STEM, and like you come from somewhere like Brooklyn, you know what I'm saying, and you're doing this grueling amount of work, and you're constantly putting on a mask. You're constantly saying things that you wouldn't feel comfortable saying outside of this workplace environment. You know what I'm saying? Actively trying to conform in it, but also at the same time knowing that it's taking something out of you to do those things on a daily basis. I think sometimes, if not done right, code switching can suck the life out of work. You know what I'm saying? Especially if you're doing something that you like, just that environment can suck that out of you.
Yep.
You know, it can really like destroy the whole work life balance situation. You know what I'm saying? But what do you think about that?
I agree, because you'll be putting more energy into code switching than actually doing your work and doing something that you love. Like, you'll be overexerting yourself to be somebody that you're not, rather than, just being who you are, doing your work, doing what you love to do, so on and so forth. And I think with that, I think that's also a reason why I always hear people say they always fall out of love with what they love to do, because if you're code switching in the work environment, of course you're putting on a front for your supervisors, your bosses, your coworkers, who are, of course, are not the same skin color as you, and I'm not gonna say that, but if you continuously have to overexert yourself to, I guess, fit into the culture of the workplace, or the culture of, I guess, society, and what society thinks how you should operate or how you should speak when it comes to being in a professional environment. If you have to continuously do that, I say just don't work at all. Because
Don't work?
For that reason.
Are you talking about
No,
don't
no,
work
no,
there?
okay,
or are you talking about just don't work, period?
Don't work there, not period. Of course, everybody got to get their money, of course. I'm all for that. But I just don't work there. Because if one day you decide, okay, well, I'm going to be my true self, I'm going to come to work with, I'm going to, if, for a woman's perspective, I'm going to, I'm not going to have my wig on per se. I'm going to just have my natural hair out, so on and so forth. If you have to do that, I think when you do that, you'll feel the backlash from the coworkers. Everybody's going to come feeling in your hair, and doing a whole bunch of different things. And for men too, like, let's say every single day I'm coming to work with a dapper suit on, every single day fresh and clean as ever, right? But one day I might decide, I'm gonna come into work, sweatpants, a little corporate merch or something like that. People are gonna look at you a certain type of way, because you've already built this image, this fake image of you in this workplace. And now once you subtract that from who you are and subtract that from your everyday presence and your everyday appearance, then how are people going to look at you? And then you're going to be wondering, like, okay, well, now I really have to code switch to just be here.
Right.
So yeah, if you have to obviously overexert yourself to do that in a workplace, just don't work there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think nothing does best but to look to the future.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Where kind of speculate what will be like in maybe 50 years in terms of code switching.
Right.
So my mind automatically goes to just make the environment more inclusive.
Yeah.
Make the work environment more inclusive. It does not take much. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of it is just getting rid of the old traditional values. You know what I'm saying?
I agree.
Companies need to restructure their value system, which I think some of the corporations are starting to do, albeit for maybe other purposes. They might not be wholeheartedly doing it because of that, but they are starting to make those changes. But those small businesses, those mom and pop places, those smaller the smaller companies really need to make an effort to make the environment more inclusive. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying give your whole life to what you do, what you work for. You never have to give your whole self to work, but there's a difference between being uncomfortable and overexerting yourself. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Yeah.
And if we just make the environment more inclusive, you would run across more situations where you might feel slightly uncomfortable rather than trying to overexert yourself to be someone different.
Right. So let me ask you this question. So, of course, companies and businesses, they have a brand, right? And they have to conduct themselves in a certain type of way that they can't do, of course, if they're in front of 10 million cameras, 10 million people, they can't operate in that sense because they have a brand to uphold. They have an image to perfect and an image to uphold as well. So let's say somebody works for the Shade Room, and the Shade Room, if I'm not mistaken, is ran by a black woman.
Mm-hmm.
You have the Shade Room, which is like notoriously known for not scandalous things, but like messiness, drama, things of that nature. Where on the other side, you have, let's say, a company like Apple or a company like Google, where their employees have to be top of the top, always present themselves in the best way, because if they don't, A, they're going to get fired. B, it's a misrepresentation of the company and their brand and everything like that. And C, if you represent yourself in that aspect, it's like the company doesn't want everybody to think, okay, well, all of my employees act like this, all of my employees think like this, and this is a reflection on the company. So my question to you would be, what do you think is the line between upholding a company's image when it comes to the public view versus you being yourself when it comes to the company?
I'm a little confused. What do you?
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. But like, so presenting yourself a certain type of way.
The company or me?
You presenting yourself a certain type of way in the company. So let's say Apple only hires people who top of the top, come from the suburbs, posh, so on and so forth. Let's say you're working for them, and of course, let's say you come from let's say you come from the bottom of the barrel,
Right.
everything like that, and you actually do land a job at Apple. What would be the fine line between acting or conducting yourself in the way that aligns with company values and company morals,
right,
versus you just being yourself,
right?
If that makes sense.
I think where the problem could eliminate itself is by people strategically choosing jobs in companies that align with their own values, align with their own morals, and where they can see themselves truly being themselves. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And shout out to those pioneers that go into spaces that aren't like that and change it. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
But I think where that whole problem can fix itself is just by being more strategic in, where you choose to work at. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, there's always going to be companies like Apple, Facebook. They'll always be there. You know what I'm saying? But, and if you have that luxury, if you have the luxury to shop around and to look around for something that fits you.
Yeah. I think just to kind of bring everything back to a main perspective and point about code switching. Of course, this is what I want everybody to take from this. I want everybody to be themselves when it comes to their job, where they're working, so on and so forth. Now, that doesn't mean going there looking like you just rolled out of bed, cursing and just talking just very recklessly. Because at the end of the day, there's a fine line between professionalism and there's a fine line between professionalism and just
wilding out.
Exactly.
But there's a bare minimum. There's a bare minimum.
Exactly. Come on. At least put on a t-shirt, some jeans or something. It doesn't even have to be the most expensive suit or the most flamboyant dress. Just like something that's like, okay, well, I can present myself correctly. Like, it doesn't matter who I run into, I know I'm going to look appropriately. I want everybody to just be themselves when it comes to that situation. Of course, if you feel the need to code switch, or if you feel the need to change your rhetoric, change the way how you're speaking, change the way how you're dressing and how you're presenting yourself, then of course that is not a workplace that is healthy for you. That's not a workplace that you should be in, because at the end of the day, you're going to continuously try to uphold the fake image, where you're going to continuously overexert yourself and put more energy into looking the part rather than playing the part. So that's one thing I really want everybody to take away from this. And also, when it comes to code switching, if you can recognize it, I wouldn't say call it out immediately, because you don't know that person's background. You don't know if that person had to just even do that to even get an interview for that job. Like, there's people who can, speak, who are not African American, who can speak, however way they want to, and land the job as a CEO or like a high company. And there's people who has to code switch and really change the way how they're presenting and conducting themselves to even land an interview. Like, that's two different things. So of course, don't call it out. Just have a conversation with them. Just like, even if they don't know that you're doing that, just point it out and say, hey, this is what it is. This is how I see, you're doing this, so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, we all got to look out for each other.
No. I think that was really good.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have too much to add to that. I think you summed up a lot of things I wanted to say. My only thing is, when it comes to the workplace, I think just being comfortable with being a little uncomfortable is good. You know what I'm saying?
Agree.
And that's the kind of stuff that drives innovation.
Yeah.
But if you feel that you're overexerting yourself and it's gone past that feeling of uncomfortability, maybe take a step back and reevaluate things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think there's a healthy amount of code switching that I think it's good.
Right.
But there's, it's once you get to that overexertion side where I feel like you could be jeopardizing your own peace of mind, and you never need to jeopardize your peace of mind for no company ever.
At all. And if you feel like you have to do that, go ahead and leave.
Right.
Put in your 2-week notice and leave.
Thank you guys for listening to the Letter to Life podcast. That was a great start to the season. I'm excited for the next episode, see what you guys think about it. But with that, I'm your host, Jordan.
I'm your host, Gio.
And you're listening to the Letter to Life podcast.